That fits a little tight. Am I bending my tang? What in the world is happening? It's day 49 of working on the Griffin sword. The last thing we did was got this guard fitting up nice and tight to the blade and got it profiled. Next thing I want to work on is the handle. So for the handle, we're going to veer off of the original plan just a little bit and make a slight adjustment of course. So on the original plan here, I've got my handle, and you can kind of see these rounded end bits to the handle. That was going to be part of the wood. Well, I've decided to change direction, and I'll tell you about it why later on. But what we're going to do now instead is make those little end bits out of Damascus steel. So right away, I've got our Damascus steel here. This is the same billet that we used to forge the guard out of, and it's the same piece that the very middle spacer was going to be made out of. Only now, instead of that little very middle spacer, we're going to need 5 spacers. So this piece is actually thick enough that we can go ahead and bandsaw it in half and get 2 out of each section, I think. I could either do that or forge this out, and I think today I feel like just bandsawing it. So let's jump right in and start making some marks, grinding, cutting, bandsawing. We need to cut 4 spacers out for this handle. So we'll have all 5 spacers in total. Okay, anytime I glance at it, it looks like the whole thing is in the tank. Like this part is down in there, but it's not, it's just the head sticking in there. Doesn't it look like that from the side? Who left the light in the water tank again? Now, unless Dad changed this, which I highly doubt, this blade is extremely dull from what I remember and won't cut a thing. But I bet Dad wouldn't change it because it has like 0.000.2% life left in it for something else still.
Hoorah!
Also, Dad hasn't been working with bandsaw stuff. I'm surprised it actually scratched the metal. This could be kind of hard though, but the blade is definitely dull. So I'm gonna put a new blade on there and then we'll find out if this is hard or not by destroying that blade immediately or not. While I was deciding all that stuff earlier, this should have been in the oven normalizing. Instead now it's gonna be hard and then we gotta normalize it anyway, yeah. I got a splinter. Oh, it's still there. Oh, I see it, it's tiny. Just wanna move forward with something. Now I don't see it. It's sticking, I can see it sticking out. It's just tiny and sticking straight in. Ow! Jeez. It's like stuck into my nervous system. I think it's connected to my spine. Wow, it's like a little tiny metal needle. There, now it's on my pants, so I can brush my hand across my pants later and get it back in a different finger. There went a certain number of dollars. I don't know how much those cost. It's like a 5-pack, probably like $5 or $10. Yeah, I just barely touched it. Barely touched it, and it started around those teeth over. I mean, this will still probably cut a little bit, but I can see the little shiny teeth right here. Could forge it out. Need 4 of them. I'm gonna see what the pattern looks like and then make my decision, I guess. That looks really good. I don't really want to condense it down more. I guess we're gonna normalize the whole bar. Let's do that next. Since this is dulling the bandsaw blade immediately, I think I'm gonna go ahead and normalize it. So we had to normalize this either way because it hadn't been done yet. This is still all stressed out and hard from forging the Damascus out and then letting it cool quickly in the air. We're gonna heat it to 1600, take it out, let it cool. Heat it up to 1500, take it out, let it cool in the air. Take it out, put it back in for the third time at 1400. Take it out, let it cool, and that'll be our normalization. And it should leave the steel in a pretty soft state. While that Damascus billet's heating up, I wanna talk about today's topic, wood. The wood for the handle has given me some serious grief, and I've put a lot of time and thought into figuring out what I'm gonna do to solve the problem. So in order to tell this story, we need to rewind the clock about 10 years. 10 years ago, maybe 7 or 8, somewhere in that time period, I bought this piece of wood right here, nice long block of ebony. When I first purchased this piece of ebony, it was gorgeous and black. At least that's how I remember it. But it was kind of wet and it needed to dry out. So I wanted to let it sit for at least a couple years. Well, fast forward to many years later, about 1 year ago, when I was working with the customer, we decided on a nice black handle for it. And I immediately knew that this was gonna be the perfect piece of wood for the project. This piece of wood is so good in my mind and so perfect, and it had been drying out for so long that I didn't even take time to bother going and looking at it because I knew it was just perfect. That was where I made a big mistake. I should have looked at the wood, made sure that it was good. Fast forward 1 more year to about a week ago, I finally went and took a look at this piece for the first time in a long, long time, and it was not what I remembered. This piece isn't nearly as black as what I'd remembered, so the combination of those two things made me not want to use this piece. It's still a really nice solid block of ebony that's been drying and curing for years. It's just a little bit lighter color than I want. Well, that brings us this piece. This is a gorgeous, very solid, very dense piece of African black wood. In fact, listen to this. This thing is super solid, super high quality, and it's been around for, I'm gonna say 7+ years as well, but we have a little bit of an issue. If we look at the sketch, the way I've drawn the sketch and designed it is for these pieces on the ends here. These are designed to be part of the wood handle. They were gonna be carved into the wood. You're gonna have these little rounded spacers on the ends that were all integral with the wood, with one little piece of metal in the middle and then another section of wood right here. This piece is about 3/8 of an inch too short to make this happen. I don't wanna sacrifice 3/8 of an inch of length. You might see that this is a massively big handle, but if I put both of my hands on here, I have 2 pretty big hands. I mean, it's just about perfect. I really don't want it any shorter. I'm gonna upgrade it a little bit. We're gonna change these 4 pieces that were gonna be part of the wood handle. We're gonna change those to Damascus that matches the pattern on the guard and the pattern on that middle piece. So we're actually gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 metal pieces now in the middle of the handle instead of just that one right there. So with all that being said, I have a lesson for you and especially a lesson for me. Next time there's some kind of fancy custom order for something, even if I think the piece of material I have is absolutely perfect, need to go double check it because my memory might have changed or the piece might have changed or both might have changed. I think my piece of metal is heated up. Let's go take it out of the thing and let it cool. The thing being the electric controlled kiln. Woo, that's hot. Oh, that's real hot. Oh, listen to those sounds. All right, 1600 degrees. I'm gonna clamp the bad end of it. Right now there's a bad end with weld and stuff on it. I'm gonna clamp that bad end here in the vise. Now the vise will suck a little bit of the heat out and kind of harden that area. That's why I'm clamping the bad end. This good end that I wanna use, we'll let that completely just air cool. You don't wanna have this cool down quickly because that'll harden it more than we want. So don't have any forced air or anything on it. Just let it cool in regular moving air and stop talking me. I'm gonna let that cool and then get this set to 1500 and we'll put it back in. It's been about 5 minutes. My billet's cooled down to 600 degrees. I checked it with a little laser thermometer. Now I'm gonna repeat the process twice, only this time we're doing 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, and then on the final time it'll be 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, and then the billet will be nice and normalized, hopefully a lot softer so I'll actually be able to bandsaw it up. It's the next day. Let's see if we actually got this metal soft and go ahead and bandsaw this. I haven't put a brand new blade in here. I think this new one is slightly dulled maybe. Let's see if it works. Oh, that's not gonna work. I think I kind of ruined that blade, but I don't know. We're gonna need something bigger. Okay, last time I used this, there was one screw. Now there's no screw. There's the one screw. Okay, let's try it on this. Is the water off, or is it gonna splash all over me? Probably should have forged it. Well, I kind of wanted to leave the pattern bold though. Or not bold, but less fine. If I would have forged it, it would have been twice as fine. I'll tell you what, I don't envy Dad right now. Sharpening a dagger. A thick, narrow dagger on top of all that. I personally find sharpening thick, narrow daggers to be one of the most difficult types of items that I sharpen in the shop. I think it's because those thick bevels that aren't very wide, they just have a lot of angle to them, and in order to sharpen without getting scratches all over your entire blade, you have to tip it up on more of an angle. Something like a chef's knife with a really thin, wide blade, you can lay it down really flat and get a super fine edge on it. But with a thick, narrow dagger, you have to tip it up on quite a bit of an angle, and it just makes it extra difficult to get it hair-popping sharp. I've got the billet sliced down the center, and the next thing I'm going to focus on is just cutting off these 4 pieces. I think I'm happy with the decision to bandsaw the piece in half instead of forging it down thinner. If I forge it down thinner, it'll compress the Damascus pattern quite a bit. But if I just cut it in half like this, it'll keep the pattern a little bit more bold. I say more bold, this is actually a really fine pattern. I just didn't want it to get more fine. Okay, let's grind a flat side on the back of all these, then we'll surface grind. I've got the pieces flat enough that I can mount them up in the milling machine. I needed to flatten them a little bit so they'll stick better to the magnetic surface grinder chuck. The pieces need to be somewhat flat, otherwise the surface grinder can actually slide the pieces around. And in some scenarios, the wheel can shoot or propel the piece at like 100 miles an hour and throw it really hard at the back of the surface grinder. I've got all 4 of our pieces surface ground. Now I want to grind on the sides a little bit, get a flat spot on there so I can chuck them up in the milling machine. We're going to mill the sides parallel. That way they'll be very easy to chuck up in the milling machine every time I go to do that. Right now the sides are all rough and everything, and they would be sitting funny in the milling machine, wouldn't sit quite right. It's probably a really bad idea. Never done anything like this before. I mill all 4 of them at one time. Put that there. Like it better if they were in the center of the vise, but oh yeah, I can mill all 4 of those at the same time. I gotta turn this on. Since all 4 pieces are surface ground flat, I've got them sitting on a block that's surface ground, so it's nice and flat and parallel to the milling machine. And I'm using a 1/4 inch carbide bit, turning at about 4,000 RPM to surface the sides of all 4 of the spacers. It's not completely necessary to mill the sides of the pieces, but it's really convenient because then the sides are parallel and square, and it just makes it easier for layout, and it makes it easier to chuck these up in the milling machine to mill out all the slots we need to make in each piece. You may have noticed I clamped a parallel in with the 4 pieces, and that's because the block that I have the 4 pieces sitting on is a little bit wider than the 4 pieces are, so I need to put the parallel in there just to make up for that extra width. If I didn't use that piece of metal, the parallel, then the milling machine block would just clamp down on the piece of metal that all 4 of our spacers are sitting on, and it wouldn't actually clamp the spacers at all. They would just be sitting there loose still. I like to use a paintbrush to clean the chips off the milling machine vise after I'm done with the milling operation. It just leaves it nice for the next milling operation. You definitely don't want any of those chips getting caught between your part and the vise, because a milling machine vise can have a lot of force applied to your part, and if you have a little chip or burr left on there, then it can actually shove it into your part and leave a little dimple or low spot. Our 4 spacers are ready to be fit to the tang now. I've got the sides squared up and they're all surface ground to the same thickness. I probably should have been processing this middle piece as well. I need to get this ground, surface ground, and milled on the edges. It's gonna be that middle piece right in there. And it's done. The middle spacer is ground down to thickness, and I made the sides parallel. It's ready to go for handle fitting. The next thing I want to do is actually start the handle fit up. We're gonna start at the very front of the handle with this front spacer and work our way down towards the pommel. So it'll be front spacer, handle, spacer, very middle spacer, spacer, handle, back spacer, pommel, pommel nut. And then it'll be done. So let's work on that front spacer. Okay, how we're gonna do this? Dike 'em. Start with dike 'em. Every good layout starts with dike 'em. That should be Dykem's motto. Every good layout starts with dike 'em. It smells good and bad at the same time. Okay, 1 inch, 350 thousandths. Okay, let's zero this out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, half of 300 thousandths is 150. Half of 50 is 25. This is how my brain works. So we zero out the dial indicator. Layout lines. Let's go over to the mill, which is 3 feet to my left, and start milling out the slot for our front spacer. Okay, let's dark over here on the left side of the moon. Okay, zero that out. Just like when I milled out the guard, I'm using a 3/16 inch cutter. This cutter is a little more narrow than the thickness of the tang, but once I get the slot cut all the way through the part, I can use the sides of the milling machine bit to cut away the groove and make it wider. That's one of the big advantages of using a milling machine versus using drill bits, is that a drill bit pretty much just cuts a hole straight down, and the milling machine can cut to the side. So that means you can take a small cutter and use it to make larger holes or slots. One of the things I love about this newer milling machine is the variable speed. I can crank the speed up super fast for operations like this, or I can crank the speed way, way down for drilling out big holes, and it's all at the turn of a dial. I don't have to mess with changing any pulleys or belts or anything like that. It's really convenient. Look at that, there are 1,000, probably more, probably like 10,000 potential splinters. Should I take my fingers and start tapping down on the metal? Look, they're sticking straight up because they're like magnetized. Okay, cool. This is hot off the mill. Let's see how far up onto the tang it actually fits without doing any filing or going back to the milling machine or anything. Okay. Okay, that's pretty good. It fits up to there. I think I'll probably hammer it on next and see how far it'll go and see. I want it to leave some shiny marks on the piece, and then I can go in and file away any high spots that it's hitting. Might need to make it a little bit wider. I think I left it about 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch narrower, the slot, than the tang. I'm gonna go get the garlic bread cooking. We need garlic bread.
Many hours later.
Ooh. Yeah, that fits a little tight. Also, I should have taken the guard off. It'd make taking this off now easier. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah, that was, I probably shouldn't have hammered it that much. Oh, my guard's popping off. I'm messing the fit up on that. Ooh. Is it coming off? It's not coming off. It's really wedged on there. Oh. What in the world? I did not feel like I hammered it on that hard. I didn't hammer it on that hard. Am I bending my tang? What in the world is happening? What?
There you go.
Jeez. Was that just from squeezing the sides of it actually made the metal move enough to where it was clamping onto it harder? Now I feel like I gotta check to see if my tank's still straight. That felt horrible. I milled another 1/1000 and a half off or so. It's getting much closer to fitting now. That's about how far it needs to go on. I think I need to file a little bit of material because it's gonna be fitting too tight. See if I can get it off this time, hopefully. I'm just about there. I've got it to where it fits up on the tang far enough, but you still have to hammer it on and off too hard. So I'm gonna keep filing on it and get it to fit just right where I want it to, and then we can see how it looks with the guard on there. After a little bit more hammering it on and just a tiny bit of filing, I probably did that process 3 or 4 times. I've got the front spacer fitting very nice. I can tap on the end of the tang a little bit to get it loose, but yet it's not loose enough where I can just pull it off by hand. Next, we can move on to actually fitting our front wood handle piece. So I've got our block of wood here. I went ahead and squared it up a little bit off camera and gave myself some lines. Take it over to the bandsaw and cut this thing in half, which is kind of terrifying because right now this is the most valuable piece of wood I think I've ever held because I don't have a replacement for this. To the bandsaw. I don't have a wood cutting bandsaw set up in the shop. I can normally just use the metal cutting bandsaws though. It's not like I'm processing and cutting up a lot of wood. Most of the times I'll just be trimming a piece of wood that's about this size, maybe cutting a 1/2 inch off one end, or in this case, just cutting the piece in half, and the metal cutting bandsaw works just fine for that. You just don't want to apply too much pressure because the metal cutting blade can create a little bit of heat, but as long as you go slow and easy, it's not a problem. Next thing I want to do is mill the ends of this nice and square to the block. My friend Corin in Australia gave me this cutter. This is used in the woodworking industry and it is amazing for flattening blocks, surfacing the ends of your handles, squaring up blocks in the milling machine. If you're in the US, you can actually get cutters that are similar to this at Grizzly Tools. If you're in the US, you can actually get cutters just like this one from Grizzly's. You see how the back side of the cutter is making these little shreds? I think that indicates that the head is tipped over this way, just a little bit. When I cut the other way, the other back side of the cutter isn't doing that. If it's tipped over this way, the front will cut and then the back will drag across it and cut too. So I think it's tipped just ever so slightly. Are you passionate about knife making or looking to start a new hobby that could turn into a profitable craft? I have an exciting offer just for you. Introducing the Pocket Bowie Starter Course, my easy to follow knife making course designed specifically for beginners. For a limited time, you can get lifetime access to this course for just $27. Down from $298. That's a 90% discount. In the Pocket Bowie Starter Course, you'll get access to 15 video lessons with over 3 hours of content, a PDF download of the sketch I design, lifetime access, and a 30-day refund policy. You'll learn everything from selecting the right materials to mastering stock removal, grinding, and finishing your knives. Each segment builds your skills step by step. Keith says, I thoroughly enjoyed this course. It was very nice seeing the entire build be made using simple everyday tools. I'll guide you through the entire process using affordable tools. The most expensive tool you'll need is a forge for heat treating, which you can get on Amazon for just $100. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. Click the link in the description below and enroll in the Pocket Buoy starter course today. Remember, this special price of $27 won't last long. Join our community and start your journey to becoming a skilled knife maker. Thanks for your time, and I will see you in the course. It's day 51 of working on the Griffin sword. I've got layout lines on this front handle block. This one needs to fit all the way up to here. Let's chuck it up in the milling machine and start cutting out this big old slot for the tang. We're gonna drill, mill, cut, slice, and slash until we've got this slot all the way through this block of wood. Hopefully I don't make a mistake, because this is quite literally the only wood that I have that is long enough for this project that looks as nice as I want it to. It's not very hard to line up the holes that I need to drill through the block. All I need to do is use a square on the milling machine vise and tap the block around until the line that represents one side of the tang slot is nice and lined up with the square. As long as that line lines up with my square, then I know when I drill that hole, it's gonna be in the right place. That is some hard, dense wood. Look at that. I mean, look at that. Look how hard that is. It's actually making little curls like if you're milling on metal. I went about a 1/2 inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch deep with the mill bit, and then I switch over to my drill bit. This African blackwood is really oily, really gummy, so it clogs up the drill bit very quickly. I can only drill about a 1/16 or maybe an 1/8 of an inch at a time, and then I need to clean out the flutes of the drill bit. Most of the time I can just scrape on it with a big popsicle stick, and that'll kind of make the little bits of wood pop out of the flutes. Every once in a while though, the flutes will get clogged up harder, and I'll have to stop and maybe use my carbide scribe and kind of pick the flutes out a little bit and kind of pop those little pieces of wood out. Once I'm done with that first hole, I then do the exact same process on the other side of my slot. I line up the other line with my square, get a nice hole started with the mill bit, and then move on to the drill bit.
In every tool, there is a hammer.
Look how polished that bottom is, or the bottom of the hole. Isn't that pretty? It's like polishing it. I've got all the holes drilled all the way through the handle. Right now though, the holes still need connected. So what I'm gonna do is take the same drill bit I've been using, and I'm gonna hold the block by hand and kind of manually push my way across those holes, connecting them all into one slot. So you can see right now there's a bunch of little peaks of material here that would keep the tang from fitting in there. I'm kind of using the drill bit in a way it's not meant to be used, applying this side pressure with it. I've only broken off a couple of drill bits my entire career doing this though. I'm not really applying very much pressure because there's not much material to remove. And you gotta remember, we're just removing wood here. It's not like I'm doing this in metal. Also, you can work it in small sections, just using like the first 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch of the drill bit to eat away through the holes, open it up, and then you move the drill bit in a little bit deeper and do the next 1/4 inch. So it's not like you're trying to open up the holes all the way through the entire depth of the drill bit in one go. You can kind of work it in little bits. I've got a nice looking slot all the way through the handle now. I have not tried to see how far it fits on the tang. Let's go ahead and do this for the first time. This is 100% my first time. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. It's still got a long ways to go though. I think there's some areas on the inside of the sides of the handle that are rubbing, because it's got plenty of room up and down. So I think what I need to do is either run the drill bit in there some more, use some side pressure, but probably actually use a broach, because I think I can see a bump. On the bottom, on the inside in here, I can see a little bump, and I think that's what's holding this out. So I'm gonna use a homemade broach and try to shave that material off and then keep fitting this handle on until it goes all the way up to the front spacer there. Can I get a broach?
Yes, sir.
Broach on. I need a wide broach. Here's my wide homemade broach. This one's to work on the sides of the handle. It's just made from a file, and I've got a golf ball on the end here. This was an idea from my friend Chris Costa. He puts golf balls on his files. It makes them really comfortable. Well, it also works on file broaches. It's just got one big tooth on the end, and I can shave away material inside the handle where I want to. Oh, we're getting closer. I didn't remove very much material at all, and that thing slides up about 2 inches further than it did the first time. I can still wiggle it a little bit that way, so I think the sides are hitting. So I'm gonna keep broaching and just removing the tiniest little bits of material until I can get this block to fit all the way up to the front spacer. It is day 52 of working on the Griffin sword. I messed with this handle fit up a whole lot yesterday. I got it to fit up as far as it needed to without too much trouble, but I had a little bit of a difficult time getting it to fit flat against the spacer. I noticed my guard was maybe still canted, a little bit of an angle, so I had to go in there and adjust things on my guard, try to get it to sit a little bit more square, and I finally got it. When I hold this up to that front spacer, apply a little bit of pressure on it, hold it up to the light, check it on all four corners, it fits nice and tight. You can't see any daylight through it. This handle fit up is very good. I'm finally glad I'm moving on to the next pieces now. Building off of this handle, I'm gonna go ahead and move right along to the 3-piece Damascus spacer that goes in the middle of the handle, and then I'm gonna fit that second portion of wood. Everything's gonna be pretty much the exact same process as doing that front spacer and the wood piece, except I'm gonna slowly be stacking up pieces further and further down the tang. After a good number of hours, I finally finished fitting all these handle pieces. We've got our front spacer, our front handle, our 3-piece middle spacer, the rear wood piece of handle, and then the back end pommel spacer piece here. Yeah, rear spacer. So all together we've got 5 spacers, 2 pieces of wood, we've got the guard. I'm very happy with how this handle came out. It's looking really, really good. As far as this pommel goes, I have a lot of thinking and planning to do because I need to figure out how I'm gonna transition from this rear spacer to the pommel. That's something I never figured out yet on my sketch. I just kind of drew it, but I don't know what I'm gonna do, so I've got a lot of thinking to do. It's time for a coffee break. I'm gonna think about it. Hopefully by the time the next video starts, I'll have it figured out. Until then, I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye! Also, check out these awesome Griffin shirts. You gotta get you one. This is the Griffin holding the Griffin sword in his hands. These shirts are awesome. They're oxblood red. I love the color. They're not red, they're not black, they're oxblood, which is kind of in between. I've washed some of these shirts several times now. The printing is very high quality. We actually have these printed right here in Springfield, Missouri. So check out a link in the description and get yourself an awesome Griffin shirt with a Griffin holding the Griffin sword.